I am now with the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, who's come over to join me in my gazebo. Hello, Sadiq.
Good to see you, John. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you feeling? Your thoughts, first of all. New Tory leader, new Prime Minister. What are you thinking?
Well, genuinely and sincerely, I congratulate Liz Truss on being elected the leader today. She'll be our Prime Minister tomorrow. We may come from different political traditions, but she, of course, was a London councillor for 4 years between 2006 and 2010. So I'm hoping we have a common desire to see our capital city succeeding and the country succeeding. But she takes over during a national crisis. We can't escape the fact that we have soaring inflation, energy prices going through the roof. And I'm hoping that her response this week is commensurate with the challenge our country faces.
Yeah, I mean, you may have bits of background in common in that way, but you're not exactly soulmates, are you? Not politically, not ideologically. And during the campaign, you'll remember vividly, she seemed to be picking on you. I mean, you were an example of what's wrong, not just in London, but with the country. I think you were soft on crime, Sadiq.
Well, listen, it's for Liz Truss to explain her fixation and the Conservative Party's obsession with me. This talk about stuff happens during an internal selection. The key thing Londoners want to see, and the country, is our Prime Minister and the Mayor of London working together to address some common issues. How do we get economic growth without the capital city? It's impossible. So let's work together. Listen, I'm not going to apologise for being pro-London, which means being anti-poverty, anti-climate change, anti-youth crime, all of which have been exacerbated over the last 12 years by the Conservatives choosing austerity over the last 12 years. But look, you don't get growth by having policies that are anti-London. You don't achieve levelling up by levelling down London. You don't address the issue of climate change without recognising that it's taking place. We've had a heat wave, we've had droughts, we've seen the floods in Pakistan, and pretending climate change isn't happening is not an option.
Right, so that's a quite a long indictment you've just spelled out there as far as the new Prime Minister is concerned. I mean, your relationship with the Home Secretary, who works in some ways in harness with the Mayor.
The future of the past one?
I'm saying generally, the one we now have, the Home Secretary for the moment, Priti Patel, that relationship is pretty rocky.
Well, hold on a sec. Priti Patel deserves some credit, and this is a Labour politician saying this, because Priti Patel listens to my lobbying over 5 years, and Patel and Johnson did a partial U-turn in relation to police cuts. It was previous Prime Ministers and Home Secs who cut 21,000 officers over the last 12 years. Patel and Johnson, to give them some credit, listened to my constant nagging and lobbying, and we had a partial return. We've not got the 6,000 officers we need. We've got 4,300, and with the new Home Sec and the new Prime Minister, I'm not going to apologise for lobbying for the additional officers experts say London needs.
You're giving Priti Patel a bit of credit there. At least some and actually, while you're speaking to us, I'm hearing at the same moment that Priti Patel has resigned.
There's no cause and effect, I hope.
No, I don't think it's a consequence of what you're saying to me, but it sounds as if your feelings are almost mixed. I wouldn't go maybe quite that far.
Oh, well, listen, there's many things on a political level that I disagree with Priti Patel about, but I've always said to the government, and now Liz Truss will be my fourth Prime Minister, where there are issues for us to work together. Let's put aside the nonsense, counter-terrorism. We worked really close together with the government. Our response to the pandemic, by and large, worked pretty well together. We've got the Elizabeth line open by working together. We can achieve so much if you put aside this nonsense. Look, stop these culture wars that pit parts of the country against one another, that pit communities against one another. Stop this London bashing that may win you a few votes in northern red wall seats. You should back your capital city, not bash it.
Yeah, I mean, but you've got a lot to do as Mayor of London to restore faith in the Metropolitan Police, which is part of your job, with crime at the the levels that it is.
Well, it's not just that. It's not just that. Yeah, you're spot on. And I'm looking forward to working with Sir Mark Rowley, who begins formally on Monday week. Listen, trust and confidence in our police service plummeted to record levels under the former Commissioner. But also we had police watchdog reports showing and exposing racism, misogyny, sexism, homophobia, discrimination. And so I don't apologise for saying to the former Commissioner, your response to those issues isn't good enough. It's a matter of public record. She went. I'm looking forward to working with Sir Mark, who's got a plan to address these serious issues. He's got a plan to win back trust and confidence, but also deal with the core issues of making further progress on reducing violent crime. You know what? Violent crime is far too high, but we've made progress bucking the national trend. Why? And how? By investing from City Hall in both police officer numbers, but also in giving young people constructive things to being both tough on crime and tough on the causes.
I must ask you, Sadiq, were you at all stung by the criticism from the police inspectorate that you, in effect, harassed the last commissioner of the Metropolitan Police out of her job.
No, well, firstly, correction, he's a former police inspector. No surprise at all, because we knew in advance, and I made this point to the Home Sec, that he was going to be biased. He's very close to both the former commissioner and the Home Secretary. It's a matter of record that he, Priti Patel, the police minister, the Prime Minister, were all in favour of the former commissioner staying. I wasn't. The litany of scandals, one after another, after another, after another. Her plan not being commensurate to the challenges we faced meant that I had no confidence in her. I don't accept the findings of Wednesday.
You feel it was a political hit job. Are you going to go out of your way to get off on the right foot with the new incoming Home Secretary? Priti Patel has gone. There'll be a new Home Secretary. What are you going to do to make that relationship work better?
Absolutely. It's really important that I, in the office of Mayor of London, try incredibly hard, and I will, to reset relations with Liz Truss and the new team she sets out tomorrow. The Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, the Chancellor, the Business Secretary, and I could go on. They're all integral to our city and our country's success. And that's why I'm hoping that Liz Truss governs in the national interest, the wider national interest, which means working with Labour mayors like me, Andy Burnham, Steve Rotherham, Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland, the SNP leader, Mark Drake, Fitting Wells, and other leaders across the country, rather than in the narrow party political interest.
Yeah, look, a broader Labour Party question now. A new Prime Minister means you focus inevitably on what sort of fist is our official opposition making of opposing this government. Now, Labour, you will tell me, you need not tell me, they've been climbing rather in the opinion polls of late. Also suggests that the Labour Party on a national level has more to do. Andy Burnham, your fellow mayor, you mentioned him just a moment ago, gave an interesting answer to a question just a few days ago. He said he still had part of his mind directed broadly in the direction of becoming Labour Party leader. Now, you've been talked about as a future Labour Party leader. How much of your mind is occupied with that?
You've got to stop speaking to my mum. But no, I've got no interest at all being the...
None whatsoever?
None at all.
Really?
None at all. Listen, look, Keir's doing a great job, and I fully expect Keir to be...
Doesn't mean you have to be utterly uninterested in bettering yourself at some point, if that's not to do down the door of Mayor of London.
Liz Truss is the fourth Prime Minister I'll be working with. Hopefully, the next Prime Minister, the fifth one, will be Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
And just imagine what we could do with a government working with the Mayor rather than against them. So I will do whatever I can to make sure we get a Labour government as soon as possible. With Keir Starmer in Downing Street, then I'll do whatever I can as the Mayor of London, working with a Labour government for the best interests of our capital city and our country.
Okay, that's an easier answer for Keir Starmer to hear than maybe the one that he heard from Andy Burnham. Perhaps he'll thank you for that. Just lastly, you are one of the voices of the capital when it comes to the cost of living crisis. What are you lobbying the government for to do on the cost of living crisis for the people of this city?
I've lived in the city all my life. I lived through the recession in the 80s. I lived through the global financial crisis in 2008. I've lived through the pandemic of the last 3 years. I've never known it so bad. I meet on a daily basis, and it's heartbreaking, mums and dads who are themselves skipping a meal so their kids can eat. I met pensioners this summer during the heat wave and the drought who were not turning their fan on because they couldn't afford to pay the bill. I think Liz Truss got a number of things. Firstly, straight away freeze energy bills this year, targeted support for businesses and families, an uplifting universal credit straight away, free school meals for all kids in primary school. She should be giving us the power in London to freeze the rents in the private sector, so private tenants can save £3,000 over the next 2 years. The response from the Prime Minister must be commensurate to the national crisis we are facing. If it isn't, then frankly speaking, she ought to have been fit for the job she's got today and got tomorrow.
Very immediately, we're going to be looking at a lot of strike action over the winter. Public sector workers very much in the front line of the argument. The fight over the cost of living. On the political level, politicians on the Labour side having to ask themselves, do they want to show solidarity with those causes by standing on picket lines? Are you going to be on picket lines?
I could well be. It depends what the issue is. Let me make this point.
Keir Starmer suggests not. Well, he does not think that's responsible. What do you say to Keir on that question?
Well, that's not quite what he says in relation to.
Well, you're not a front bencher, but he doesn't want to be seen to be identified too strongly as a potential government with disputes against the government.
Well, I've been on picket lines before, and I'm sure I'll be on picket lines in the future. Let me make this point. Strikes are a symptom of 12 years of austerity with, nurses, teachers, transport workers, and others, year after year after year, having pay rises that don't keep up with inflation, so effectively taking a pay cut. But look, the way to resolve differences, right, isn't to, as some sort of virility test, to slag off workers and slag off trade unions and to change the law. It's to get around a table and talk to those who represent the workers about what they can do to resolve differences. And by the way, these same transport workers, during the pandemic, were keeping public transport going to allow our nurses, our teachers, those who work in retail, journalists to get from home to the office to keep our country going.
The way to respond, a lot of your constituents.
Well, the way to respond is not to castigate them and to incite strike action. Is to talk to them about what the issues are that their members are griping about.
All right, Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London. Good to see you, Sadiq. Thank you for dropping
Pleasure.
dropping by.